So I'm Melissa Sheketoff, host of Melissa in the Morning on WICC. My buddy Mike Cerulli.
Political reporter at News 8, so happy to be doing this.
I mean, this is kind of cool that we get to sort of combine
Now
our powers together, if you will.
What is this? What are we doing here right now?
I mean, we're hanging out instead of on the phone or, on the move doing news stuff. We get to sit together, inches away from each other.
So this is the first in a series of conversations we're going to be having with business leaders, government leaders, leaders of all types in our state about the state of things and about a lot of exciting things that are happening down the line. And I'm really excited to be doing this with you.
I know, right back at you, Mike. And what's really neat is Mike and I both come from a reporting background, obviously. Mm-hmm. And so it's constantly changing, right? I mean, what's happening, whether it's laws, whether it is just, the emergence of AI or social media. And it just feels like that sort of falls on business owners, entrepreneurs to sort of figure it out. So what's really neat about MADE, which is the first time that we've had something like this, is they're really focusing on that. They're providing people with resources. They're connecting them to me, I always call them sort of the head honchos, like the big wigs, if you will, of Connecticut, to get that perspective, make connections. It's really a one-of-a-kind event. It's neat.
And getting everyone in the same place for a series of events, I think, is so important, not just as a reporter, because we like to get everyone at once and ask them questions, but if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a young professional, you can sort of see everyone you need to see. Instead of chasing someone around, friend them on LinkedIn, message them, they don't get back to you. They're right here. You can have the face-to-face conversation, make the connection. And I think these events are structured in a way that's really going to help those conversations happen.
Yeah. I mean, and we do get the opportunity to actually have some of these people join us at the mic, which will be really cool. Yeah,
we've got a great lineup of leaders today. And the focus is on talent, young talent, attracting young talent, retaining young talent here in Connecticut. It's a really salient issue right now. What makes a person want to live here in Connecticut, work here in Connecticut? Besides just maybe the prospect of a job.
Yeah, right? Exactly. And so we're very excited. Our MADE series podcast that's going to be coinciding with the MADE series events happening all throughout the year. And we hope you'll be tuning in.
And welcome back. And we're so glad to have, for the first in our series of conversations, Jeff Flaks, the CEO of Hartford HealthCare, one of the largest private employers in the state of Connecticut. Jeff, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. My pleasure.
So we're talking about young talent today, and I think I want to kick it off. I was in this position just a couple of years ago. You're at UConn. You're looking at what you want to do with your life, right? Why Hartford HealthCare? What's your pitch to young professionals?
First of all, I love Connecticut. Connecticut's an amazing place to be. It's an amazing place to have a career, to develop, to raise families. And I have to say, from a healthcare standpoint, there is no better place to be in the country. We have the best healthcare in America here. When you look at how Connecticut is evaluated by U.S. News and World Report, by Forbes magazine, by quality rankings, by Leapfrog, we're at the top of every list. We have world-class resources. So this is an incredible place to start your journey and to have the access to the best people, the best technology, the best resources, the best opportunities.
And Jeff, I'm curious because, when we look at sort of what's been going on with, I call them the backbone workers of society. I mean, our healthcare workers, we love them, we cherish them. How do you attract people to the healthcare industry in Connecticut?
Yeah, first of all, the most amazing people are those who choose to work in healthcare. They're healthcare heroes. I mean, they help us in our moments of greatest vulnerability. They help us in our moments, of greatest triumph, greatest joy. They're there, and they're always there, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and their competence, their capability, their empathy, it's extraordinary to see. So, attracting people to work in healthcare is really important. We have incredible state colleges and universities across Connecticut, amazing private institutions. So we have a beautiful pipeline. We have great leaders of our academic institutions who work in partnership with us, and organizations like ours have these very well-established pipelines so that we can train and develop the workforce of the future. And we're increasingly investing in that, with remarkably innovative and great ingenuity within our programs.
So I think when people think healthcare, obviously they're thinking about the nurses coming out of UConn and Sacred Heart and elsewhere in the state. They're thinking about healthcare workers, doctors, and things like that. You have a huge technology operation. You have finance. You have all these different skill sets needed. Where would be an area of workforce demand that people might not think you need, but that you think about a lot?
That's a great question. So we have 45,000 colleagues who work at Hartford HealthCare.
Wow.
So we have tremendous needs in our organization. We hire in Orient every 2 weeks about 300 to 350 people into our organization. So we're constantly seeking new talent and new people to join the organization. The areas that get great attention, relative to nursing, where there's tremendous needs, physicians, pharmacists, technologists are key areas. But what you described, Mike, is really important areas. We have 1,000 people who work in our technology division. And the future of healthcare with artificial intelligence, machine-based learning is an incredibly exciting area, and it's how we're going to transform and make healthcare better. We have significant numbers of people who work in our strategy, our development areas, supply chain, right? In this moment where tariffs are so present, and how we do so much international sourcing, we buy over $4 billion of goods and services within Hartford HealthCare each year. The people who run our supply chain, their sophistication and capacity to manage globally this area is a critical area. So most people don't fully appreciate the sophistication we need to just support, this massive infrastructure so that we can be here for all people at all times. So we have tremendous needs.
You're also in sort of we were saying what's really neat about MAID is the fact that people are trying to keep up with the times. And what I think is incredible is that you're not only, like you were saying, AI and trying to, work that into the system, but also you guys also focus on bringing quality care, because it's no secret that you've got major healthcare industries kind of being the smaller guys being gobbled up, but you guys don't, cut corners. Is that the best way to put it? I feel like you guys are, if anything, you're bringing more resources to the table for people. How do you keep up with the needs, if you will, of the 2025 average patient in Connecticut?
Yeah, so importantly, in a place like ours, we can't protect the status quo. We have to change it. The status quo has to be disrupted. Healthcare must become more accessible, must become more affordable, health equity has to improve. And importantly, we have to get better. So to do that, we have to change and adapt, and it really requires innovation. So there's never been a more exciting time to work in healthcare. We just launched on April 1st, HHC 24/7, and I use that as an example because our people effectively built this, partnered with an international company, and rolled it out over about a 120-day time frame. But it's a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week virtual primary care process, AI supported, so that we now have a full team of physicians and providers who are available to our patients 24 hours a day, 7 days a week,
Wow.
with or without appointment. Like, this never happened before.
Right.
So this is the way things are getting better and changing. And you used to have to wait 9 months for a physical. We can do it now, same day or next day. You can get your medications, refilled. People who are diabetics can have their routine visits now managed without having to go to bricks and mortar settings. So we need people who are thinking differently, who are change agents, who bring a lot more to the table, who can help us innovate. And that's what we're seeking.
When you're talking about hiring, whether it's technologists or medical professionals or anywhere in between supply chain folks, I know that obviously, compensation, benefits, that's going to be a part of the conversation. But are there conversations that you have with other stakeholders here in Connecticut, whether they be housing providers, whether they be state government, about things that they can do to help you build that hiring capacity up, make Connecticut a more attractive place, an affordable place to live?
Absolutely. We work very closely. First of all, the governor's a tremendous ally and friend, for us in healthcare. During COVID, we worked shoulder to shoulder, and it's only gotten better in many ways since, with respect to these types of collaborations that we can do. But I'll tell you, to me, it's about culture, Mike. We want to create an organization that has tremendous aspirations. So our aspiration is to be the most people-centric health system in the nation. So we're looking for people who gravitate for being part of an organization who has great ambition, great aspiration, and who's working with a sense of purpose. And I have found that what we've been able to achieve has largely been, I often say this, there are other parts of the country, where there are organizations who have better pedigree. There are parts of the country where there's people who have more endowment, more wealth, or different, more favorable demographics. But there's no part that has better people. And it's the people that allow us, from a culture standpoint, to have now the highest quality ranking in America. I mean, that would have been unimaginable a decade ago or 2 decades ago. And it really is driven around being able to create a culture and bring the right people together. And in Connecticut, we have amazing people.
We also, I feel like, since the pandemic, saw so many people say, you know what, life is short. I have this skill set, but maybe I don't want to stay in the industry I am. And what I think is really unique as well with healthcare is the fact that people may have a set of skills, if you will, not to go so Liam Neeson on this one. I have a set of skills, but I think what's really neat is that it can be transferred into the healthcare system. And so I'm wondering, you know, where maybe people have a misconception of, oh, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse, but I can't fit into that mold. But that's not the case.
First of all, there's so many roles. I was just on the phone on the way over here with people who work in our street medicine program, who are literally dispatched every day. They provide medicine, you know, on street corners,
love
in
that.
pop-ups, in churches, barbershops, homeless shelters. Today, they're literally on the street. That team is comprised of people from many different backgrounds. But the example I want to give, because it really highlights your question, last Thursday we inaugurated an amazing program with Quinnipiac, where we are now taking people who work within our organization who do not have clinical backgrounds, have a degree in a different field, and are giving them the opportunity, excuse me, to get a bachelor's of science degree in nursing in 2 years, while they work full time for us effectively. Go to school 1 day a week, go to school the second day in their clinicals, getting it in our buildings, taught by our faculty. The degree is granted and overseen from from Quinnipiac academically and from a curriculum standpoint. And these individuals now can have an accelerated process while they're still maintaining and supporting their family. And within 2 years, get a second bachelor's degree in nursing with all of their clinicals in place. And they're able to do it for about literally 10% of the cost of the traditional degree between our support and Quinnipiac's.
Yeah.
Wow.
Amazing program. And it was cool to see that rolled out, and cool to see all the pathways that are offered into this field. So Jeff, we want to thank you. This is a really great conversation. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you out on stage here at MADE.
My pleasure. I'm grateful for the state of Connecticut in doing this event today. You know, this is the type of thing we need to be doing, promoting Connecticut. There's so much opportunity, and it's great to be celebrating it.
Jeff Flaks, CEO of Hartford HealthCare. Thanks for joining us. All right, so it was a great conversation with Jeff Flaks. We're back now with a familiar face to both of us, familiar face probably to many of the people watching and listening, the man with two names, or one name twice, Anthony. He's the Chief Marketing Officer of Connecticut. And if you're wondering, what does the Chief Marketing Officer of Connecticut do? Sometimes people ask that. Right behind you right there, Anthony,
It's
right?
one of the many things that we do. So whether it's the MADE events that we're talking about today, or the signs, or just making people feel proud of Connecticut in general. It's one of the many things that we do.
And for the folks only listening, we're referencing the trolling welcome signs that Connecticut has put up on all of our land borders with other states.
People
This one.
should know that, yeah.
Yes, this
right?
one says home of the basketball capital of the world.
So Governor Healy in Massachusetts actually gave Governor Lamont an okay. She said, as long as UConn
Yes.
keeps winning titles, we can keep the signs. So
Wow.
one more year, she's
Yeah.
okay with it.
That's
Okay.
big because I think she's a former college basketball player herself.
I believe so. Not to mention that, but they also have the Celtics, so it's
Right.
like it's a pretty darn good argument to have on their behalf. But we are the basketball capital of the world, so let's just keep it going.
Yeah. So we're talking today about talent, retention, and attraction in Connecticut. I actually think this is a really interesting entry point to note because that went huge on social media. People were posting about it, they were joking about it, and there's almost a attitude that Connecticut has now of we're a small state, we're sandwiched between these two kind of big hitters with Boston and New York, Massachusetts and New York, obviously. Is this been intentional that you're trying to give Connecticut a little bit of an attitude, something that maybe adds to the image of the state?
Yes, there's no better way to answer than directly and just say absolutely. I'll tell you guys actually a little story. So Mike knew this from years ago. He's actually one of the first people I met when I moved to Connecticut. So I started working.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Oh, you did? No.
I didn't
No,
know that
I
either.
could have sworn you did.
I thought it was so
Right,
special, but apparently Mike's more special.
So now we're all, not only our listeners are getting the story, you guys are too.
Wow, look at that.
So when I moved here in 2021, I got the job with Governor Lamont, and I got the offer in April of 21, started in May 21. And so we we find a house. We couldn't move in right away, so I lived in a hotel for the first couple weeks. And so I'm coming into the state, have all my stuff, I'm walking in, and the person at the front desk says to me, she goes, "Are you moving in?" And I said, "I am." And do you know what she said to me? "Why?"
Ooh.
She asked me why.
Yeah.
And I said, "Why?" I said, why not?"
Yeah.
And I was like, this is interesting. There's a little bit of, kind of like a little bit of a chip on shoulder. And then, so 3 weeks later, my wife was actually pregnant with our second child, my son Julian, and we go to her doctor appointment. And the person at the front desk, she goes, "Oh, you guys are new. Did you just move here?" And we said, "Yes, we did. We're really excited." And she goes, "Why?" So this is my first taste of Connecticut. And so long-winded story, circling back to the start. Yes, Connecticut should have some swagger. There is no reason why. We just heard from Jeff talking about the quality of life that we have here. Not only some of the best schools in the nation, safest neighborhoods, top quality access to healthcare, but it's also beautiful. We have 18-time winning college basketball teams. We have the nation's best pizza. So all of these things, all we're trying to do is just put that at the forefront and give everybody in Connecticut that reason to be proud and to crow about it, because there is so much.
I mean, I remember when I first met Anthony and I had said, I'm so glad that we finally have somebody who understands the weight behind just tourism alone. Because growing up in Connecticut, being born here, I mean, I have to say, since becoming friends with Anthony, I feel like I understood the state so much better, because it just wasn't something that was focused on. And we were always seen as like a pass-through state, you know? Oh, okay, well, I live in Connecticut because it's easy to get to New York City, right? It's easy to get into Boston. But you've totally changed that culture, and I think it's also important that, so you're sort of the brainchild behind MAID. I don't know if you like me calling you that, but that's
I'll
what
take
I say.
it. I'll take it.
I
I'll
mean,
take it.
all I
As
know
long as
is
you're not calling me late
what-
to dinner, I'm good.
No, I certainly would never do that. No, never. But I think what is neat with this like next layer is not only are we talking about living here, but even just working here and the opportunity for really any age range. You're talking high school to college age, all the way up into, because people aren't retiring. They're looking for that second, third career. And so, and anywhere in between. I mean, talk about sort of your focus on that and why even make a series like this.
Absolutely. So all of this goes back to one of the things Governor Lamont has been saying since he came into office in 2019. We need more taxpayers. We don't need more taxes. So what we are trying to do is utilize the state's identity, not only to drive pride, but to get more people here. So when you look at the way we market the state, really, it's a virtuous cycle, and it starts with tourism. Sure, we need to get more people to come and recognize that Connecticut is not a drive-through state, but a drive-to state. And you do things like highway signs. You do things like touting the Mystic Aquarium, Maritime Aquarium in Norwalk, coming right here to Hartford to see a football game or a basketball game. All of these things make people realize there is so much to do in Connecticut. So when you combine that with an incredible quality of life with the schools and the communities and the healthcare, it gives people the reason to want to stay here. And the more people we have visiting and staying here, that means the more workforce, the better workforce we have.
Yeah.
And that makes more businesses want to operate here because they have productivity. And the more businesses that operate here, we get more private investment. So it's a virtuous cycle that all starts with the visit. And so, sure, I can go out and I can do a ton of ads. We can get creative with things like highway signs. But we don't talk enough about what the value proposition of doing business in Connecticut is.
Yeah, well,
And-
I feel like that's why MAID is so perfect.
And that's
it's
it.
so perfect, and we're so glad that you came up with this idea, Anthony, and that you've included people like Mike and I in this, and thank you so much. And I mean, I can't wait to see all these events roll out, including today. It's going to be great.
Thank you guys for doing this, and I appreciate everything that y'all are doing for the state, not just today, but in general.
Thanks. And welcome back. We're so glad to be joined right now by a guy who wears two hats with the state, one as the Commissioner of the Department of Economic and Community Development, the other as the Chief Innovation Officer here in Connecticut. It's Dan O'Keefe. Dan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Great to see you both.
I realize that Dan's also wearing not two jackets, though. It's
Yeah.
one jacket,
It's
just so you
one-
know.
we've-
Two
it's
hats,
all
but one
unit
jacket.
here.
It
Yeah.
technically is a swacket.
A
because
swacket.
It's a sweater plus a jacket.
Swacket.
I mean, it's pretty fly.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah. So Dan, you're batting cleanup here. We've heard a lot of great stuff, a lot of Connecticut positivity. Some might call it cheerleading for the state. Pizza, basketball, all these great things. I want to present to you another narrative. You're 22, you're a senior at UConn or Yale or Trinity, or even younger than that. Maybe you're coming out of high school and looking at what you want to do with your life. Why not go to Boston, to New York? Why not go out west or down south, where it's a little bit cheaper to live, or to Boston and New York, where it's a little bit more popping at night? Why here in Connecticut for that young person making that decision?
Yeah. Well, look, I think that young person now has options. So when I was that young person, you had to go to one of those places. Now, I also, by the way, met my wife in a bar in New York, so I'm not going to fault any 20-year-old.
What bar are we talking about?
It's called Gaslight 2.
Gaslight 2.
Meatpacking District.
I
which
love
was the
that.
Hopping
Yeah.
Center back then.
Love that for you.
But that was the only option when I was in my 20s. You know, and now what we're seeing, I think post-pandemic, you just see a lot more activity and energy and fluidity that aren't necessarily solely around these large cities. Large cities are always going to be incredible. New York's always going to be New York. And if that's what you want as a graduating college, I'm not going to fault you. But now you've got options. You know, if you look at some of our cities, so look at Stamford, look at Hartford, look at New Haven, you know, what we're seeing now is a lot of people choosing to stay. And I think they're choosing to stay for a couple reasons. One is the energy is there. So, you know, a lot of these folks are now looking for smaller cities, not necessarily just the concept of a large city. And we're also seeing job opportunities, you know. So if you're a graduating senior coming out of college, you've just got a lot more options than you used to have.
I also think there was that new state report, Mike, of course, don't quote me on this, but that said that we saw a huge uptick in the last year of people who chose to live and recreate in Connecticut, even if they wanted that city life for a job, that they want to live here. And I'm wondering why you think that is, Dan.
Yeah. So let's step back and look at population trends generally. So last 4 years coming out of the pandemic, we've seen our population increase every single year. We're the only state in the region that has seen their population go up every single year. And I think that's because Connecticut does truly have something special. You know, it's a special place to raise your family. It's a special place to educate your children. So where our true comparative advantage sits, it admittedly is when you're kind of in your late 20s. That's where we start to see real influx of population. Frankly, that's when I moved to Connecticut in 2011. I wanted to move to a place where I wanted to start to think about raising my family. But I think the population increase is partially that, more people choosing Connecticut because of the high quality of life, but also what I was describing before, more people are also choosing to stay. So it's a combination of those two things that I think has really reversed what had been years of population decline, and now we're seeing consistent population increases.
For listeners or viewers that might not understand the intricacies of state government, the DECD commissioner, your job, you're almost sort of an ambassador on behalf of the governor to the business community. Now, of course, our governor has deep relationships in the business community, but you often are the first phone call for a Jeff Flaks, for even maybe a smaller entrepreneur here in Connecticut. What are you hearing right now from the state's business community? Your phone, I'm sure, rings off the hook from 6 to 6. So tell me what you're hearing.
It's a tough environment right now. You know, we have been on a tear. You know, the population increases I mentioned, but also our economic growth. So we've been on a consistent path of reacceleration of economic growth that we've seen, again, coming out of the pandemic. And now there's just a lot of uncertainty in the system. And if you think about economies, you know, they're large, complex things. Don't get me wrong. Ours is a $350 billion economy. That, by definition, is complex. But at some level, they're incredibly simple. It's consumer spending, business investment, government spending, and net exports. That's it. Yeah. And if you look at all four of those right now, they're all under pressure. Consumer sentiment is the lowest it's been in almost 20 years. What I'm hearing from businesses is, can you give us a sense as to where you think government is going, quote unquote, government is going, so we can start to think about where and how to invest? And there isn't a great answer right now, because what they're hearing and what they're seeing is a lot of uncertainty. You know, tariffs come in, they go out, they go up, they go down. That causes a lot of investment deferring. You know, they're waiting to invest. And the reason why I think that's so problematic for our economy is if all four of those elements are under pressure, that is a recession. That is not partisan, that is not politics, that is mathematics. So I actually wonder if we're sitting in a recession as we speak. You never know until you're on the other side, but it feels like we likely are.
And again, bringing it back to that, whether it's UConn or a Yale senior or someone who's coming out of high school, going into maybe a technical school, what advice do you give them? You've been in this business for a while, and you've seen, you know, the kids coming out of college in 2008, the kids coming out of college after the tech bubble burst. What's the advice you're giving to them entering the workforce right now?
Look, I have been doing this a long time. I came from the business and investment world prior to coming into public service. I used to have a lot more hair. For those listening, I'm really bald. And the reason why I say that is, you know, cycle. And when you're experiencing one, particularly as a young person, it can be very scary, right? You see what's going on with the financial markets, and you're wondering if maybe the economy you're inheriting won't be the economy you hope to inherit. And what I would say is play the long game. You know, for someone early in their career, focus on getting those foundational skills. Let cycles cycle. Likely you don't have a whole lot exposed to financial markets right now anyway. So let the cycle cycle.
Come on, Dan. I've got a fidelity.
Trust me, I started quite poor. And so let cycle cycle. it is going to be noise. Play the long game and really focus on what you're passionate about. Really focus on what you really want to do, and don't worry. This too shall pass.
This
Yeah.
too shall pass. I think that's a good note to end it on. Dan O'Keefe, the Department of Economic and Community Development Commissioner, the Chief Innovation Officer, and a speaker today at MADE. Thanks for being
Twice,
with us.
in fact.
Twice.
You're really bored with me.
Oh, so
man.
again,
Thank
only
you.
one jacket, but he's talking twice. So
Yeah.
get it straight.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
So I can't believe that we did it. We did our first podcast, and they're not like pulling us apart. That's so exciting, right?
Great series of conversations, I thought. Really, really informative.
Yeah, and it's really exciting. Again, Made Series is going to be going on for the rest of the year. There's going to be 3 more in-person events like the one we're doing today at Rentschler Field. The next one is going to be at Yale, actually, which will be really exciting. And then we're also going to continue on with the podcast, doing episodes in person and then doing some fun kind of behind-the-scenes ones in studio. So I'm excited.
So you can follow along with us, obviously, wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow along on the LinkedIn group and go to Connecticut-made.com to learn about future events and future podcast episodes.
Yeah, definitely register. I think what we learned in just our opening podcast today, just how many resources and people you can get connected to in Connecticut. So definitely do that.
Yeah, this was fun.
Yeah, I'm excited.